This is the story of the one. As a custodial supervisor at a high school, he knows that during cold and flu season, germs spread fast. It's why he partners with Grainger to stay fully stocked on the products and supplies he needs, from tissues to disinfectants to floor scrubbers. All so that he can help students, staff, and teachers stay healthy and focused. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Imagine a summer so hot, it doesn't just break records, it completely resets what hottest on record even means. Picture huge parts of our planet, bustling cities, farmlands, all just sweltering under this unbelievable heat. It pushed people, infrastructure, everything right to the edge. That's exactly what large parts of the world just went through. A really profound moment, echoing everywhere. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission here is simple. Cut through all the noise, the constant flood of information, and bring you the essential insights, the things you really need to know to be properly informed. Today we're doing a particularly important deep dive. We're looking at some really crucial global events happening right now. We'll be focusing on those extreme weather patterns that have been all over the headlines, but also looking at things through a really interesting lens. The news sources coming out of El Salvador. It helps connect things you might not expect.
Yeah, and the material we're working with today is, well, it's really rich. It comes mainly from the big El Salvadoran news outlets, talking Diario El Salvador, Diario El Mundo, El Diario de Hoy, and La Prensa Gráfica. What's so compelling, I think, is how these local papers, these national voices, they don't just give us insights into El Salvador itself, they also provide this unique window onto major global stories. So by looking at them together, we can start connecting the dots in sometimes surprising ways, see how global trends play out locally, and maybe how local events reflect bigger things too.
Exactly. Our job today is to really unpack these stories, get beyond just the headlines. We want to pull out the most important bits of knowledge, the deeper meaning, what it all implies. We want to show you why this stuff matters, why it should matter to you. Think of it as a shortcut to being genuinely well-informed without that feeling of being totally overwhelmed. So yeah, settle in. We're aiming for more than just facts here. Hopefully you'll have a few aha moments along the way, things that might shift how you see things. Okay, let's start with the global climate picture then, because our sources kick off with something pretty startling. China. They just had their hottest summer ever recorded in 2025. And this isn't just like a small increase. Between June and August, the average temperature across the whole country hit an incredible 22.3 degrees Celsius. That number. It represents intense, relentless heat over huge areas. It's really forced people to rethink things, Policymakers, ordinary people just trying to cope. It's got everyone talking.
It really has. And what's genuinely striking, beyond just that average number, is the sheer scale of it, the immediate impact. Our sources point out that back in July, authorities had to issue serious public health warnings, especially in eastern China, where you have these massive cities. Think about Beijing temperatures there. We're hitting nearly 40 degrees Celsius. That was back in June. And it hasn't really let up. Shanghai, for instance, is looking at averages over 35 degrees just this coming weekend. This isn't just a freak event. It feels like it's becoming a trend, a dangerous one. The implications are huge. Public health, sure, but also the strain on power grids, transport, just the basic rhythm of daily life for hundreds of millions. How do societies even adapt when their environment turns hostile like that?
And here's where it gets really interesting, right? It wasn't just China dealing with this kind of record heat. Our sources in El Salvador, they're reporting on this international stuff, and it reveals a much bigger picture, a kind of synchronized crisis. Meteorological agencies in Japan, South Korea, the UK, they also reported their hottest summers on record this year. So this isn't isolated. It's not just one region having a bad summer. It's genuinely global. Paints a pretty vivid and frankly alarming picture of the whole world heating up fast. It feels like a fundamental shift, something affecting all of us no matter where we live. We're kind of past localized weird weather now, aren't we?
I think that's fair to say. And this widespread, unprecedented heat across such different places, it really forces the question, why? What are the sources saying is driving this? And the answer, well, it's stark. It's consistent across the board. Human-caused greenhouse gases, they're flagged as the primary driver of climate change. This isn't just theory anymore, it's a direct line. These gases are leading straight to heat waves that are longer, happen more often, and are way more intense than what we've seen historically. We're seeing it play out in real time, the consequences of, our industrial activities, our consumption. It's global. It's like all those warnings about long-term effects. They're not long-term anymore. They're here, now.
So, okay, think about a huge player like China. Massive economy, global influence. What does this mean for them in terms of responsibility, future action? Our sources highlight that China is currently the world's biggest producer of CO2. That puts them right at the center of this whole challenge. But it's also crucial to note they have made some really significant pledges, big ones. They've said they'll hit peak emissions by the end of this decade, that's only, 5 years away, and then achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. These commitments carry enormous weight globally.
They really do, host. Connecting this to the bigger picture, these pledges aren't just ambitious, they're absolutely critical for the planet's climate future. They could reshape the entire global energy system. And the aha moment here isn't just the size of the promise, it's realizing that while, Western countries often point fingers, China succeeding or failing on these targets, that dictates the climate future for all of us, way beyond their borders. But the immediate reality right now is the impact of current emissions keeps growing. The huge challenge is balancing that rapid economic development, lifting millions out of poverty with these climate goals. It's a struggle lots of nations face, but for the world's biggest emitter, it's particularly intense. And the whole world is watching. The health risks, the economic disruption, the environmental damage we're seeing, it's happening now, affecting communities far away too. We're all kind of dependent on their domestic policy choices, aren't we?
Yeah, it really underscores the interconnectedness. And while these huge global patterns are unfolding, our El Salvadoran sources show that no country is really separate from it all. They paint this really vivid picture of local environmental concerns that tie directly into that bigger climate story. Macro trends becoming micro realities.
Exactly. For example, we see the Ministry of Environment in El Salvador forecasting rain for the San Salvador area, actually this Wednesday evening. And interestingly, the total rainfall in El Salvador for August was actually above average. Now, first glance, that might seem contradictory, right? Global heat waves, local heavy rain. But it actually highlights something key about climate change. Things get more erratic, more intense. It's not just uniform warming, the whole system gets destabilized. So yeah, some places get extreme heat, others get more rain, maybe more unpredictable rain, or these vaguadas atmospheric troughs that La Prensa Graphica mentions, bringing heavier rains and storms. This difference shows the complex ways climate change actually manifests. It's not just heat, it's instability, extremes at both ends.
And these shifts, these unpredictable patterns, they have real consequences, especially for something as basic as food. El Diario de Hoy talks about how droughts, floods, even new kinds of plagues, all made worse by this climate unpredictability, are hitting the production of basic grains hard. This isn't just an environmental note in a report. It affects what people can afford to eat, market stability, and crucially, the livelihoods of farmers who are right on the front lines. It's a direct link from global climate to the dinner table.
And we even see broader connections in related content from Diario Salvador. They mention things like deforestation in the Amazon causing a massive 75% drop in rainfall there. That's an ecological disaster with global implications, potentially shifting weather patterns far away. And then there's this almost poetic detail, a giant iceberg, 39 years old apparently, melting off Antarctica. These seemingly separate things, a local rain forecast, the Amazon's health, an ancient iceberg dying, they all point to a planet changing fast, changing profoundly. And critically, these changes often trace back to human activity. It's like a mosaic of evidence showing a world in flux, where every local event is part of this bigger, interconnected planetary story.
It's such an intricate web, isn't it?
Yeah.
Global climate shifts, local environmental worries, and how they ripple through a country like El Salvador.
Yeah.
It really needs that consistent, insightful look. And it's fascinating how the local papers themselves are bridging that gap, connecting those dots for their readers. It really shows how interconnected everything is.
Precisely. And that effort, to take complex stuff and make it clear, that's something we really value too. It's all about providing those essential insights, helping us all make sense of the world, whether it's huge global patterns or the heartbeat of a local community.
Absolutely. And speaking of thoughtful conversations and informed perspectives, especially around El Salvador and its place in the world, we wanted to mention a project that shares that same mission. Day 1, September 2025. Welcome to News El Salvador SV, a space for conversation and reflection, where we explore scientific, social, environmental, political, economic, and statistical topics, as well as current events in El Salvador and the world, with a fluid and easy-to-understand intellectual curiosity. Each episode discusses and breaks down key events that help us better understand the reality around us. Find us for free on YouTube Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Deezer, or other platforms. Look for us on PayPal with the username PayPal2025186, all written together, PayPal2025186. Remember, your contributions help pay bills so we can continue to provide content. We are News El Salvador SV. Follow, share, and comment.
That sounds exactly like the kind of deep dive into reality we're aiming for here too. Making complex information accessible, engaging for anyone wanting to understand the world better.
Indeed. And with that crucial context in mind, let's pivot now. Let's zoom in further on El Salvador itself. Explore what the local headlines are telling us about the nation's pulse, its unique challenges, and what's developing right now. Okay, diving into El Salvador's economy. One thing that jumps out from Diario El Mundo is that, according to a recent study, El Salvador has some of the highest electricity prices in Central America right now. That's not just, a number on a chart. It's a real burden. It hits every household, every business. We're talking higher bills for families each month, higher running costs for businesses big and small. That can really stifle growth, reduce what people have left to spend. It's a fundamental cost affecting the whole economy.
Absolutely, host. And linked to that economic pressure is something potentially even more significant, the pension system. It looks like it's under serious strain. El Diario de Hoy highlights that the pension debt grew by over $396 million just between January and July of this year, 2025. And then La Prensa Grafica puts the total figure, the overall pension debt, at over $10.9 billion. That is a colossal number. It underscores a massive long-term financial challenge for the country. There's talk of a new pension reform expected in February 2026, and you can see why it's so urgent. This isn't just about balancing books, it's about the security of future retirees.
Right, a huge figure. But amidst these challenges, there's also significant investment happening, or at least announced, which is a more positive sign. Diario El Salvador reports on announcements totaling $3.2 billion for a megacity project down in La Union. That could totally reshape the region. And then there's Urbanica, a big developer, executing what they're calling an historic investment, $1.5 billion spread over 10 years. That shows long-term confidence. Plus, there's news of over 5,000 new social interest homes planned for construction. These aren't just abstract numbers. They can mean real transformation for communities, jobs, much-needed housing.
That raises a good question, though. How does all this big-scale investment actually filter down to ordinary people? Does it help them day to day? Well, Diario El Salvador also notes that INAVE, the Social Housing Fund, is actively helping families improve their existing homes. So, if you connect the dots, it looks like a two-pronged approach. Building new stuff, yes, but also helping people fix up where they already live. That seems crucial, doesn't it? Addressing the housing shortage and improving the quality of life in current neighborhoods, not just focusing on shiny new projects.
The sources also touch on labor and business dynamics. We see the Superior Labor Council starting its work, which is a big deal for labor relations. But, interestingly, El Diario de Hoy points out that the ILO, the International Labor Organization, isn't present for this launch. That detail. It kind of raises questions, doesn't it, about maybe international standards, transparency, how the council might be viewed globally. On the business side, things seem to be modernizing. There's growing use of electronic signatures. La Prensa Grafica even explains who can use them and how, which suggests a push for efficiency. Okay, let's shift gears to the political scene. Here our sources uncover some particularly interesting things. El Diario de Hoy reports that Vice President Felix Ulloa took 15 trips to 11 different countries, all in 1 year. That's according to Vice Presidency's own report. But here's the kicker: the costs for all this travel, not publicly available. That immediately makes you think, right, questions about transparency, accountability, how public money is being spent, especially for top officials. It's the kind of thing that fuels public debate.
And if you put that alongside other governance aspects, Diario El Mundo reveals El Salvador submitted over 80 reports in a year to human rights bodies at the OAS and UN, plus another 45 for UN special procedures. On the surface, that looks like a lot of engagement, right? Projecting an image of cooperation on human rights. But then El Diario de Hoy quotes analysts who feel the U.S. has a biased posture on human rights issues concerning El Salvador. So we have this complex picture: active reporting on one hand, skepticism or perceived bias from a major international player on the other. Shows how tricky international relations and human rights perceptions can be.
Definitely tricky. And a major political issue getting a lot of attention, especially in El Diario de Hoy, is this movement pushing back against reforms for indefinite presidential re-election. These aren't minor tweaks either. They reportedly extend the presidential term to 6 years and get rid of the second-round runoff election. If those go through, it could really change the country's democratic structure, maybe concentrate power, weaken checks and balances. It hits right at the core of the nation's political identity.
And what really stands out is how strong the pushback is from different groups within El Salvador. Citizen movements are actually appealing to the Supreme Court, the CSJ, asking them to declare these reforms unconstitutional. They see it as a direct threat. There's a workers' group, the Movimiento para la Defensa de la Clase Trabajadora, planning more legal action too. So it's an ongoing fight, legally and politically. And it's not just domestic. Latino leaders in the U.S., through Alianza Americas, have condemned the reforms, said they irreversibly weaken the democratic balance. So yeah, this is clearly a huge divisive issue for El Salvador's future. Lots of concern, both inside and outside the country, about where things are heading.
On the admin and tech side, which affects how people interact with the government, Diario El Mundo tells us the RNPN, that's the National Registry people, plans to roll out a digital ID card next year, the digital DUI, after a 2-year wait, apparently. That's a big step towards modernization. But here's something really forward-thinking, also from Diario El Mundo. Salvadorans will now have the right to be notified if an artificial intelligence decision affects them.
Wow, that's actually quite advanced, isn't it?
It really is. The aha moment for me wasn't just the transparency bit, but that El Salvador is tackling these cutting-edge AI ethics questions now, maybe even before some bigger tech-heavy nations.
Yeah, it makes you wonder. What does it mean for a government to be so proactive on defining citizen rights in this automated age? Could this be a model for others struggling with, the black box of AI? Another policy area causing some jitters, according to La Prensa Grafica, is this deadline closing for NGOs, non-governmental organizations, to register as foreign agents. Now, that might sound like just paperwork, but it could have really significant, maybe even chilling effects on civil society groups. Being labeled a foreign agent can impact their ability to operate freely, get international funding, do their work without intense government scrutiny. It's definitely something to watch, thinking about the health and independence of advocacy groups and the nonprofit sector in El Salvador.
Okay, let's turn to some pressing social issues now. La Prensa Grafica confirms a really grim reality, the death of a nurse. It's been confirmed as a feminicide. That's a specific legal term in many Latin American countries for the gender-based killing of women. Her ex-partner is the main suspect and has been captured. It's just a stark, painful reminder of the ongoing challenges with public safety and specifically with gender-based violence, a critical area needing much more effort.
And what's insightful alongside that is a note from El Diario de Hoy. A criminologist is publicly questioning the official government data about achieving 1,000 days without homicides. This isn't about denying any progress made, but it really underscores how vital, transparent, verifiable statistics are, especially for sensitive things like crime rates. When experts raise doubts about official numbers, it can unfortunately chip away at public trust. And it makes it really hard to get an accurate picture of the real security situation. We need more clarity, more context in that kind of reporting.
Definitely. Several sources also consistently bring up healthcare concerns, always vital. The Prensa Grafica reports a 5th human case of screwworm, or mycosis. That's a concerning parasitic infection needing careful public health tracking and response. They also mentioned a new hospital law is expected to affect students, maybe impacting training, residencies, career paths, and adding to that, medical students themselves are saying they've had 2 months without answers on various issues they've raised. That suggests maybe a bottleneck or communication breakdown somewhere, which could affect the future healthcare workforce.
It does raise a sobering question, doesn't it? How complete and accurate is the official record keeping? Especially for vital statistics like deaths, La Prensa Grafica cites a really concerning detail. 22 deaths that occurred in August didn't show up in any government registry. That's not just a typo or an admin slip-up. It creates real problems for understanding the true scale of public health issues, mortality rates, overall safety. Without reliable data, how can you make effective policy? How do you allocate resources properly? It could mask underlying problems.
And beyond the data, the sources capture the human side too. Community appeals, justice system stories, like the family of Catalino Miranda asking publicly for his release so he can die at home. That's reported in multiple papers, a very human plea for clemency, highlighting those humanitarian aspects within the legal system. The Prensa Grafica also mentions a mother whose son was captured, being called in to identify police officers she says arrested her arbitrarily. That points to ongoing discussions about due process, individual rights, police accountability. These stories really bring the complexities of law and community feelings to life. It's not all just current problems, though. Our sources also give us this rich view of El Salvador's history and culture, reminds us of the deep roots and the dynamic present. La Prensa Grafica, for instance, talks about finding 7 pre-Columbian bowl cords, amazing archaeological finds. These aren't just old stones. They tell us so much about the societies that live there, their rituals, daily life. Adds layers to understanding the region's long history.
And what stands out is how these discoveries connect to deeper cultural traditions. The same source explores El Salvador's medicinal heritage. It details 10 local plants used medicinally for centuries. Some even ended up being used in Europe back in colonial times. That highlights this incredible wealth of ancient knowledge ethnobotany. And it's relevant today, with growing interest in natural remedies. It's a fascinating link between past wisdom and present interest.
We even get these fun glimpses into colonial life, how people entertain themselves, bullfights, playing cards, climbing greasy poles. It paints a picture, right? People finding ways to connect and have fun, even in tougher times. And art is still thriving. El Diario de Hoy showcases an exhibition, Santa Vilés, calling it a window to Salvadoran art, shows that creative spirit is alive and well.
And the sources definitely cover modern culture, too, showing El Salvador is very much engaged with the present and future, not just its past. There's news about reggaeton launches, the pulse of popular Latin music, the Studio Ghibli Fest bringing those amazing animated films from Japan to Salvadoran cinemas, and even Yandel doing a symphonic show mixing modern music with classical arrangements. It's this vibrant mix, isn't it? Tradition, modern entertainment, global influences. Shows a really dynamic cultural scene.
Okay, let's shift our focus outwards now, beyond El Salvador's borders. See how its papers report on international events that clearly resonate there. Several sources, El Diario de Hoy, La Prensa Gráfica included, highlight this pretty big and controversial international story. Former U.S. President Trump claiming his administration eliminated 11 terrorists from the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua in a lethal attack on a boat in the Caribbean. And this is framed within the context of Washington deploying military assets near Venezuela, so it really emphasizes those ongoing regional tensions, the complex geopolitics in the Americas.
Yeah, and that kind of claim, especially from a former U.S. president, it prompts the question, how does this play internationally? How does it land in countries like El Salvador, historically so influenced by U.S. policy? La Prensa Gráfica also notes Trump dismissing rumors of his own death as fake news, a sign of our times, maybe, and his plans for federal intervention in Chicago and Baltimore despite local opposition. These stories, even if not directly about El Salvador, they echo strongly across the region because of U.S. influence, the speed of news. They shape opinions, diplomatic relations everywhere in the Americas.
And Diario El Mundo carries a particularly charged international headline. It really underscores the complexity and sensitivities. It reads, U.S. perpetrated its first military coup near the Venezuelan coast. Rubio refuses to speculate what followed.
Oh, wow. That headline alone, even if brief, implies serious regional tensions and perceived U.S. involvement in Latin American affairs. Exactly. It's the kind of thing that's watched incredibly closely by neighboring countries like El Salvador, given the long history of U.S. foreign policy in the region. It speaks volumes about perceived actions and influence, and connecting this to global humanitarian crises. El Diario de Hoy reports on a truly devastating landslide in a village in Sudan. Over 1,000 people dead. Just tragic. It's a horrific reminder of how vulnerable communities can be to natural disasters, often made worse by, climate change, erratic weather, or unstable conditions on the ground. The immense human cost of global instability and environmental shifts.
Our sources also don't shy away from the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, bringing its harsh realities into Salvadoran news feeds, showing that global empathy. La Prensa Gráfica reports a young man detained in Jerusalem for graffitiing the Holy Sepulchre with a message about Gaza. A small act, but symbolic of the deep pain. There are also these terrible accounts. 80 deaths reported in Iran's Evin prison after an Israeli attack, and reports of Israel killing over 30 Palestinians, with its prime minister apparently ready to approve taking over Gaza despite protests. It points to a worrying escalation.
We even see referenced in videos that poignant story of Ukrainian children going back to school while attacks continue, many studying online now just to stay safe. These international conflicts, reported right there in El Salvadoran media, they're this constant somber reminder of the global challenges, the human suffering, the resilience too, happening all over the world. They form a stark backdrop to local news.
Okay, for a quick break from the heavy stuff, let's look at sports. Diario El Mundo has exciting news for tennis fans. Djokovic beat Fritz. He's facing Alcaraz in the U.S. Open semis. High-stakes global sport, always captivating.
True, but even in sports, the social challenges creep in, don't they? Diario El Mundo also reports a 6th conviction for racism in Spanish football in just over a year. It's a sad reminder that issues like discrimination are still being fought, even within popular culture. Things like football that are supposed to unite people shows these problems are everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you always get a bit of celebrity news in the mix. Keeps things grounded, maybe. We see updates on Kazoo, the singer, Yandel, the reggaeton star. Even a story about La Chilindrina from El Chavo del 8 having a fall. Later stuff, sure, but it keeps a finger on the pulse of popular culture across the Americas, shared touchstones, even in serious times. So So, as we start to wrap up this deep dive, wow, we covered a lot of ground. We journeyed from those intense, record-shattering heat waves in China and what they mean for the global climate, all the way to a really detailed look at the economic, political, social stuff shaping El Salvador right now. And we touched on those bigger international stories too. Geopolitics, crises, even sports that echo locally and globally. It's been quite the exploration of headlines from September 2025.
It really has. And what stands out, I think, what we really hope you take away is just how connected all these seemingly separate things are. That global climate crisis, it directly impacts local farming, local weather, even in El Salvador. International politics, big economic forces, they affect domestic policy, people's daily lives even far away. And getting a sense of a nation like El Salvador through its own media, it offers these incredible insights into the broader human experience right now in 2025. It helps you see that whether it's a heat wave in Beijing or a debate about pensions in San Salvador or a new rule about AI, they're all pieces of the same really complex puzzle we're all navigating together. They influence each other in ways we might not even expect.
So, as you think about everything we've discussed today, maybe consider this. In this world that's just getting more and more interconnected, where your local news is reporting on global climate shifts, where international conflicts feel present in our daily lives, how do you choose to stay informed? How do you engage with it all to really try and understand the reality around us? What does being well-informed actually mean to you in this landscape that changes so fast? And what steps do you take to connect those dots for yourself? Something to think about. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes, thank you. We really hope you found these insights valuable and maybe gave you some things to reflect on.